wasn't that praise just so awesome? Thank you so much, ladies. I heard a worship leader one time say, I have to try to take the people where God has taken me. And I think that Kimberly and Carrie just took us all with them. And it's such a blessing. His presence just is filling this place. And so I wanted to just touch on, again, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And so we have to be so careful what we allow into our heart. Proverbs 4 tells us to guard our heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. Because what is inside of you is going to come out at some point. If you have anger and bitterness and resentment and unforgiveness, it's going to come out. If you have love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, and self-control, that's what's going to come out. And so her mouth, she opens with wisdom. So I encourage all of you to read a proverb a day, because it does really help to keep the devil away. It's more important than your daily vitamin, as important as our bodies are. And I really appreciate the teaching on our health, and because, you know, the problem with bad health is that you can be the most spiritual woman in the world, but if you can't stand up, then you can't do a whole lot for it. You know, so you have to take care of your physical body as well as your mental body, and so I just really appreciate all the good, great teaching today. Verse 27 is our letter is Zadi, and Zadi is a TZ. So you say T and Z at the same time, sort of like pizza. You're the so, and it stands for righteous. It's something, each letter also has a gematria. If you look on the back of your little alphabet card, on the back it tells you the number that's associated with each letter. And the numerical value of Saudi is the 90. And so who remembers someone who was 90 years old and gave birth?
Oh.
Sarah.
Do you know? She had her hand up. Sarah. Right. It's so funny because I have to tell you this little cute story. My husband's aunt was probably one of the most godly, precious little women I've ever known. She taught first grade for, I think, 20 years. She went back to school when she was, you know, late in life. And she was like the wonderful grandmother teacher. Okay, everyone loved her. And so when she turned 90, I had just taught the story to the children about Abraham and Sarah. And then Sarah was 90 years old and she had a baby. And so one of the children went and asked Aunt Weta, "Are you going to have a baby?" And was like, "What? Where did that come from?" And so I had to tell her the rest of the story. So here we have Sophia. She watches over the affairs of her household. And the bread of idleness she doesn't eat. And so we have here Proverbs 6, 6 6, go to the ant thou sluggard, in case anybody needs to hear that one. You know, the ant is so industrious that, you know, it lives like, I don't know, 3 times its weight. You know, and you see this tiny little ant, this giant breadcrumb walking across, and so she watches over. But what, you know, I'm not thinking so much about the threat of idleness as far as, you know, a bad housekeeper, because, you know, that, as important as it is, you know, to be clean and healthy and all that, you want to watch over what's going on in your house. What is going on with your children? You know, I had 2 sons, and when they were teenagers, I was teaching full-time. And I had one son that got up very early in the morning. His first word was up, and I'll bet you can guess which one it was. And the other one, Kevin, my first word was a night owl, and so he would stay up very late at night. And so I had to burn the candle at both ends if I wanted to talk to them, you know. And so I would wait up late for Kevin to, you know, come in from work or whatever, and we'd talk, and I'd say, well, you know, how are you really doing? And I'd get up early and spend time with Eric, and I tried to stay on top of things. And as much as I tried to stay on top of things, they still, especially my younger one, got in with the wrong friends. They were, you know, he was going to a different church than we were, and Christian rock, and so I thought everything was okay, because it was a church group. And little did I know that the friends at this church had a big bowl of marijuana at their party. And that's the first time my son ever smoked. And he just got in, things went from bad to worse. And my son, that was so godly and knew the Word of God more than anyone I knew. He could quote 4 verses. And have to tell you, go back just a little bit about when Eric was 5 and his brother was about 8. I used to work in child evangelism. And so I would take them with me, and what it was, you go to these different neighborhoods and you teach the stories about Yeshua to children in the neighborhood, you know, and so someone would host you, and then they would invite all the kids from the neighborhood. So every week, Eric would raise his hand, I want to be saved. And he was like, I don't know, 4.5. And I said, okay, honey, I hear you. You can talk to me at home. And then, of course, he'd get busy and he'd forget all about it until the next time we had one of these, and he'd raise his hand and he'd want to get saved. And I'd say the same thing. So one Sunday, we went to a little Mennonite church. We were visiting with some friends, and they had a children's church upstairs in the balcony. And so we got into the car, and Kevin and Eric were in the back seat. And Kevin said, "You'll never guess what Eric did." He loved to say those words. And my heart used to just kind of stop a little bit. He said, he went out and got saved. And I said, well, honey, I thought you were going to talk to Mommy about it. He said, well, Mommy, I tried and you wouldn't save me, so I saved myself. And so he knew the Savior from the time he was a little boy. And he loved the Word. He was like a little sponge. He just love to memorize the Word of God. And so when I tell you about him going to this new church as a 17-year-old and taking his first marijuana, this is a boy that was leading Bible studies after school because he went to the principal and asked if he could. And what I want to warn you mothers and you girls is that if you make friends with the wrong people, if you are close to the wrong people, now remember what Yeshua did. Follow what the Master did. He preached to multitudes, but then he had 70 that he sent out, and then he had 12 that he really spoke his life into, and then he had 3 that he could trust. Never forget those concentric circles, girls and mothers. When you see your daughter or your son hanging around too much with the wrong people, they may have all the best motives. Eric had the best motives. He wanted to go reach the world. He was called. But he got too close to the wrong people. And none of us are lovers. None of us. No matter how old we are. I mean, you hear preachers that have been in the ministry for decades, you know, that it takes a lifetime to build up a testimony. And it takes one stupid mistake to ruin your life. But we have a Yahweh who can redeem. And he was the righteous one. He was the righteous one, and because he is righteous, then he can take back all those years that the enemy has tried to steal. And my son today is a responsible businessman, one of the most wonderful fathers I've ever seen. A godly man in so many ways. He still needs prayer because Eric never did anything halfway. So when we got into Jewish roots, the pendulum swung from the church lied to me to, oh, I think I'll be Jewish. So we've gone around and around about Yeshua, and that Yeshua had to be deity, because if Yeshua wasn't God, if Yeshua wasn't Elohim, then how could he be perfect? Because sin passed among all men through Adam. So, as we're loving our Hebrew roots, be sensitive. The enemy is not going to come to these girls that know the word and say, here's the dope, go take it. They're not going to do that. But he will come through false doctrine sometimes, through false teachers. You cannot believe everything you hear on the internet. And you have to teach your kids. Technology is a tool to be used. But remember our precious friend, Brad Scott, used to say, the internet is the modern day tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Now, I believe it's basically evil, but Yahweh, in his goodness, has allowed us to have our part in it too. So you can find good things, but you have to be so careful, because you have people on the internet that have no credentials, no training. You don't know their life. So be very careful. She watches. 1 Thessalonians 5, let us not sleep, but let us watch and be sober. So a little acronym for watch is watch your words. Life and death are in the power of the tongue. And what we say, we can have. How our Yahweh make us different than the animals? One of the most basic things is that we can think. We can think about thinking, okay? We have that cognitive ability, and we can speak. I know there are some people that can understand animals and what they're saying, but I haven't really heard any animal talk, and the only ones we know of are the serpent and the donkey. What was good, what was bad. So, and I just, I think that it would be a really cute skit for somebody to make. Girls, if anybody ever wanted to do Balak's donkey thing, I used to have this little puppet of Balak of the donkey, and I gave it to my grandson because he loved it so much. But I've always wanted to put into that little puppet's mouth, and you call me stupid, because people say, you're dumb as a donkey. So, words. What are words? Because you have what you say. And we've heard so many wonderful things today about who Yahweh says we are. Who Yahweh says we are. And that's what you need to key in on. Who does he say I am? Not listening to those wicked voices. Because, there are all kinds of thoughts going all through your head all day. And you can't stop the birds from flying over your head. But you can keep them from making a nest in your hair. Okay, you don't have to take that thought when that bird tries to drop its little present on you. So just think about that the next time an evil thought comes. Think about the bird flying over. Okay, am I going to take what that bird just dropped on me, or am I going to say, wipe that off? So. That's a little illustration for you. Not a very nice one, but it gets the point across. Okay, what's your actions? Your actions. Okay. What did Israel say? We will do what you say. Obedience. That's what he wants. Obedience. And obedience even to our husband if we're married. Submission to our husband. And that's a tough one sometimes. But as we're faithful to Yahweh's word, he will bless us. He will bless us. Let our actions be what the master's actions would be. Who in the form of God thought it not robbery to be equal with God, but made of himself no reputation. He allowed sinful men that he had brought life into the world, the creator of life. He allowed them to spit in his face. Has anyone here ever had anybody spit in your face? I have too. And it's not a pretty thing. I was working on my certification in Abernathy. I was almost about to finish my master's degree, and I took a little job as an aide, just part-time, and they had this little girl that had an IQ of 16, they thought. She was 13 and almost as tall as I was, and her little arms were about like this. She looked like she had polio, and when she came to us, she couldn't stand up, she couldn't speak a word, she couldn't do anything. And so when I first started working with her, and she used to spit on everyone. Okay, that's one of the things that she would spit and then laugh. So she spat on the other aide, and the aide just went like that, and Teddy goes, like a little bird or something. And she never spat on that lady again. Okay. And she said, if you do that, then she will spit on you. I said, I've worked 6 years for my master's degree, and a little spit isn't going to stop that. So, I mean, you know, what are you going to do? If I were to do that, then there goes the certification. So it wasn't going to happen. But it made me think about, because it is so degrading. And it just, I went home and I just thought, Master, they spat on you. They spat in your face. The very ones you were dying for. And what is our problem? We cannot forgive. They spat in his face. They plucked out his beard. I mean, anybody ever had their beard torn out? I have. It is painful. And I can only imagine they're in your face, you know. Actions. T is your thoughts. You know, when a man's ways please Yahweh, then his thoughts are going to be established. You know, Psalm 34, commit your works unto the Lord, and your thoughts shall be established. So work on those thoughts. I tell you, it all comes down to the heart. And like I've already talked about your company, don't ever forget all of us need those concentric circles. You stay close to people that are going to build you up in the most holy faith. And a lot of us are called to minister, but even those who minister, you have to have godly friends that are going to build you up. And that you know you can trust. Company. So as we minister to other people, let that be, you know, people out on the fringes, not people that we share our heart with. You better make sure that you know that person believes the same things that you believe, that honors Yahweh the same way you honor him. Because a godly woman is not going to sit and listen to ungodly stuff. That's one of the ways you know when you have a godly friend. H, habits. Habits. And these are the things that we've done for so long that we do them without even thinking. You just, you know, you get up in the morning, you brush your teeth. You know, you just don't even think about it. You know, there are certain things that you do. Something that has become a habit that is such a blessing to me is that before my feet hit the floor, before I get out of bed in the morning, there's a Jewish prayer that talks about Rabba Emunateka, great is thy faithfulness, Moda Adi, Levaneka, Melchai Dikai. And thank you for restoring my soul, because, you know, your soul rests and sleeps, and Yahweh is able to speak to your subconscious. That's why it's so important that you never, ever, ever go to bed angry. I'll never forget when I got married to my husband. We had 300 people at our wedding, and 150 were on the bride's side. Those were all the people of the church. And then 150 were his relatives that came from Texas, because we were married in Missouri. And do I have time to tell him how I met my husband? A little bit. Okay. All right. So Ed and I went to the same college, Bible college in Springfield, Missouri, for 2 years, and we never met because he worked all the time. And they offered us a trip to Israel for $500, and so it would cost at least $25,000 to do that trip out. We flew to Athens, Greece, and took the Love Boat across the. I mean, It absolutely was. It was a 3-layer cruise ship, 7-course Greek food. And someone had told me before I went over that if you eat, if you keep your stomach full, you won't get seasick. And so I ate, I ate a lot, more than I usually do. And I gained like 10 pounds in 2 weeks. But I never got seasick. So it worked. And so anyhow, here we are. We go, so I get to Israel. It's the biggest, one of the biggest cruise tours that ever had. So what they did was, the boat, the ship would dock like in Haifa up in the north, and then we had all these tour buses that you would go see whatever was up there, and then you get back on the ship that evening, and then the ship would take you to the next little place, and then you get on the buses and you go see something in the middle part, and then Jerusalem, and then down in the south. And so you never had to move your luggage. It was like the most wonderful trip you could ever imagine. But, because we, they had underwritten our thing and it was so cheap, we were in the bottom of the boat. And so they didn't have any, electricity, a whole lot of electricity down there, so I couldn't do a blow dryer. And my beautiful natural curly hair is total frizz without hot curlers and hair dryers and all that. And so I wasn't about to let anybody see me like that. And so I bought this, I had just cut my hair, it was real long, and so I cut it real short, and it was jet black. I mean, it was so black. I mean, lots blacker than, this is like a lot, yeah. This, believe it or not, this is like 5 shades lighter. And so anyhow, I digress. So here we are, get off the boat. They had like 40 buses because there were 647 people on our tour. We filled up an entire plane, the big plane. And so here, as usual, I was running late. And so it isn't always bad to be late. So you might end up with a really good meeting if you're late. Just a little thing. But he taught me real fast not to be late. So anyhow, so I got on the bus, and I was the last one on the bus. And I go to the back, and I saw, this guy in front, and I thought, because I still wasn't over not liking men at that point, I got saved, I wanted to be a single missionary. I don't need men in my life. They're not good. And so I'm so glad I was Baptist, or I definitely would have been a nun. So I went to the back of the bus, no seats. I came back to the front, and I said, "This is the only seat on the bus. Is it okay if I sit here?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, sure." And so the entire time, he was like nobody I had ever encountered. Every boy I had ever known was after one thing, and even in Bible college, I had to get out of the car sometimes because I'm like, you're going to be a preacher, you can't keep your hands to yourself, and I just told